Los Angeles, and most Hollywood nights. She goes to California, oh, California.
What you say about Los Angeles?
LA got the people saying,
You're listening to Corner of the Galaxy on cornerofthegalaxy.com. It's time for another episode of Corner of the Galaxy from the Box, the show that gets you behind the scenes of the LA Galaxy and into the minds of soccer reporters and MLS experts. Your hosts for the day are Corner of the Galaxy's Josh Guesman and LA Times soccer reporter Kevin Baxter. Let's start the show.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Corner of the Galaxy from the Box on cornerofthegalaxy.com. I'm your host, Josh Guesman, coming to you on a Monday, November 4th. LA Galaxy 4-1 victors over the Colorado Rapids. It's almost like it was never in doubt, except it was in doubt for a little while there. LA Galaxy advance out of the first round. They'll now face Minnesota, who also escaped by their first round. Both teams closing it out in two. Won't play that third game, but now have that dreaded 3 weeks off. We'll talk about that. Talk about the Galaxy schedule, whether that helps, that hurts, and then, of course, a major announcement today, including Newcomer of the Year, so we'll talk a little bit about that as well as we get you pointed in the direction of the knockout round now, the semifinals of the Western Conference coming up. All right, to help us do all of that, we're glad to have him back. It's Mr. Kevin, the Panda Baxter. Kev, how you doing, bud?
Hey, tomorrow's election day.
That's what I heard.
See my sticker there? Did you? I don't care who you voted for. Did you vote?
I did. I voted. Luckily, at least in Orange County, if you turn your vote in early, it sends you a text message telling you that you voted and then it counted and that you're all good. So I am all good and ready to go.
I did that by mail for one election. I actually like going to the voting booth. I did ahead of time. The lovely and talented Miss Panda arranged for us to go ahead of time. But if you have your sticker, you can go to Coffee Bean tomorrow and get a free drink.
Ooh, that's nice.
So there's that. By the way, there is always with politics and everything, there is always a soccer angle. So right. I want to share a couple of somewhat political anecdotes, if that's okay with you.
That's fine with me. Yeah, I have one too. So all this reminds me of Galaxy things and how it ties in. So please go ahead.
See, I knew you were going to say that, and I knew that because we talked about this before you went on the air, and
that
you said
correct.
It would be okay. So, one thing about the election is Joe Biden, of course, is not standing for re-election, so he's out of office come January, no matter what. And it's a little sad because I don't think there's ever been an administration that is more pro-soccer than the Biden administration. They were the first ones to invite an NWSL championship team to the White House. No one did that before Biden. I saw Biden at the World Cup in Brazil when he was vice president. He was there representing the U.S., went to a couple of U.S. games. I saw Dr. Jill Biden, the first lady. She was in Tokyo. I think she was also representing the U.S., and she went mainly to women's soccer matches. And if you remember in Tokyo, the stadiums were empty, and you could hear her in the empty stadium cheering for the U.S. team. And it's sad because whoever wins this election, Trump or Kamala Harris, they are going to preside over the 2026 World Cup, which is kind of cool. And the 2020 Olympics, of course, too. But the 2026 World Cup, it's a pretty big deal, and they're going to be the ones presiding over. But what I was thinking about leading up to this election is the first time that Trump ran was 2016.
Right.
And if you remember, regardless of the outcome of the election or who you voted for, if you remember, on election day, the polls were showing that Hillary Clinton was going to win.
Right.
And I was going to Columbus for a World Cup qualifier. It was U.S. and Mexico. And remember, Trump had said all those things when he came down the elevator about Mexicans. So there was a lot of tension around that game. And as I got on the plane, I just assumed, like everyone did, that Hillary would win. When I landed in Columbus, I found out, in fact, that Trump had won.
Right.
And we went to training the next day and wanted to ask the team, the players, what they thought. And it was really Michael Bradley was the captain, and he took a really a strong captain's role and said, we're going to go out there and represent the U.S. the best we can. Please, everybody, just mind their manners. And, it's not about politics, it's about soccer. Tim Howard, he's the starting goalkeeper of the national team, says they count the votes and they tell me who's president. I didn't vote, and I wouldn't have voted for Trump if I had, but there it is. And Christian Pulisic said, everyone, he's playing in Germany then, if you remember, and he said, everyone's always asking me about the election. And he said, I'm not voting for either candidate, so I don't really care. And I was thinking, what? You guys represent the United States of America, at least pretend.
Right.
And then the game came, and the American Outlaws, who are a great supporters group, but they smartly realized that there were, as Michael Bradley said, a lot of tension, U.S. and Mexico, with Trump now as president. American Outlaws went out of their way to welcome the Mexican fans. I saw guys buying Mexican fans beer, congratulating them when Mexico scored a goal. Mexico won that game. And it could have got really ugly. And I think there was a lot of tension in the stadium that night, and everyone was really concerned. And the American Outlaws, and the Mexican fans too, but the American Outlaws really took the right tack to calm things down. And it turned out to be, aside from the loss, a really uneventful night. But so those are my memories of what I'm thinking about going into election day. But you have an even better one.
Well, I have two because I remembered. Everybody knows the story of how the LA Galaxy were winners in 2014 and were headed to the White House, I think in 2015, right, under Obama. There was a chance for myself to apply for a press credential, and I'm sure it would have been at least vetted through the LA Galaxy, which means there was a good chance that I might have gotten a press credential to attend the White House and do it. And I was like, you know what? There'll be another one. I won't need to do that. Like the whole deal. Like, this is Josh being an idiot, right? And so ever since then, I've regretted that. So,
but that looked like a good bet. They had won 3 of 4 at that point.
It felt good, right? It felt strong. You're like, no problems. This is, how easy this league is for the LA Galaxy. So I remember that. The other thing is that obviously one of the crazier coincidences in LA Galaxy history is that on January 6, 2021, when the Capitol was under siege, I was actually on a conference call with the LA Galaxy. In fact, a bunch of us were on the Zoom call, and the person that we were talking to was newly announced head coach Greg Vanney. His first press conference, his Zoom call, his very first one, was on January 6th while January 6th was happening. Like, I was watching it on one screen and talking to Greg Vanney on the other screen. So politics, soccer, they're always there.
Yeah, there's as I like to say all the time, there's always a soccer angle. But do you think any of those people that attacked the Capitol were motivated by their unhappiness at the hiring of Greg Vanney?
I don't think so. Although certainly through all this. Well, let's get to some of the soccer stuff now.
The important stuff.
But by the way, I echo your encouragement. Go out and vote. Be part of it. I'm not telling you how to vote. You go and vote the way that you want to and the way that you think you're represented. That's the best thing that can happen. So,
you really want to do it this year too, because from everything I'm seeing, this could be the highest turnout ever, and you don't want to be one of those people
who didn't do it.
Yeah.
Well, if everybody jumps off a bridge, Kevin, are you going to jump it up? No, sometimes. Depends.
Maybe, yeah.
All right.
What's at the bottom?
The LA Galaxy 4-1 wins over the Colorado Rapids. It was funny. I was speaking to a former player. And this was prior to this game being played. So you're thinking Thursday night, Thursday night. I was speaking to a former player. We were sort of kicking some things around, and I said, I've watched the LA Galaxy go and beat Colorado 5-0 at home. I watched them suffocate their offense. A team, by the way, that finished top 5 in the Western Conference in goals scored. Colorado knew how to score goals. I watched them suffocate it. Am I seeing something that's not there? I feel like I don't want to give the LA Galaxy more credit than they deserve, but then watching them play we always play this game. Kevin, is it the Galaxy really good or is it Colorado really bad? And so I was talking to this former player, and the only reason I'm not naming him is because I didn't say I was going to talk about this, and I don't call him, but basically they were saying, it's a little bit of both, but that the LA Galaxy look really good, and perhaps the LA Galaxy are the only team that can beat Miami. Whenever you look at how the Galaxy play and how Miami play. So there seems to be at least some undercurrent of pundits, and now I think the Galaxy and the way they won, Kevin, have now dictated that people pay attention to them, right? It's like you can't miss the Galaxy scoring 9 goals in the first 2 games, only allowing 1. And you can't miss that and say, oh, well, the Galaxy aren't contenders. So as you're watching this, but I think it's up to us to balance that a little bit. Colorado was probably one of the worst teams coming into the playoffs as well. There was a talent gap there. We saw that. But how would this play at altitude against the Colorado Rapids in a game where their back was against the wall? And I think it may have been one of the more professional games the LA Galaxy went out and played when you look at it. Remember, this game is 2-1. It's a 4-1 ending, but it's 2-1 in the 90th minute. The Galaxy are leading by just a goal. It's the first minute of stoppage time when Riqui Puig puts in the third, and then I think 2 minutes later puts in the fourth, right? So it's a 4-1 game, but that's a 2-1 game on the road at altitude against Colorado. I thought it was incredibly smart, professionally played. What do we see from teams that go into Colorado, for me, Kevin, is that they fade in that second half, right? They fade because they're out at altitude. Colorado's made them run, made them chase around, do a whole bunch of things, and now they're tired. The Galaxy seemed immune to that both times we saw them play in Colorado this year. And I have theories on why that is, and I even tried to ask Greg Vanney about it afterwards. But there's something about this team that is different than some of the other teams in how they play. I don't know if that's good or bad. It seems to work out well for them in Colorado, but at least in Colorado, in difficult places to play, we can see the Galaxy sort of, the cream rising to the top there. And to me, that's an indication that this Galaxy team could go really far.
I thought about the same late game thing that you were talking about as I watched Riqui Puig score those 2 goals in stoppage time. I mean, here's a guy spent most of his life at sea level, and he's playing at altitude in the 90th minute, and he's scoring twice on breakaways when he's running away from Colorado defenders, guys who play in this altitude all the time. That was really impressive. But and I don't have all the playoff scores in front of me here, but the Galaxy, under the old format, they would have won on the aggregate 9-1. They scored 5 goals in the first game, 4 in the second. I don't think any other playoff team has scored 5 or 4 goals in their 2-game series.
Yeah.
So that's how dominant the Galaxy have been. I agree. I think Inter Miami is really, right now, from what I've seen, the only team that is close to the Galaxy, the way the Galaxy play.
In talent-wise, though, because they just got beat by Atlanta, right? I mean, this is we can't compare their situations, but it feels like if you're going to rank them right now just based off of goals scored, how they look, the Galaxy are probably in that top category.
Yeah, they're probably ahead of Inter Miami, but Inter Miami is coming off that record season, and so you got to show them a little bit of respect. But, I mean, certainly the way the Galaxy played, when you look around, Seattle, as you mentioned earlier, they're a defensive team, but still, they scored 1 goal against the 10-man Houston team. They scored 1 goal in the 2 games to advance. Seattle, I still think, is a strong team, but they haven't looked strong yet. LAFC, they would have lost the aggregate to Vancouver under the old scoring system. Now they face an elimination game on Friday at home. Nobody's really, Minnesota beat Real Salt Lake, who had a good season and were supposed to be so good. Columbus is out, which means that the Galaxy or LAFC could host MLS Cup if Inter Miami loses, because the Columbus was the only other team ahead of them.
Yeah. So
the playoff, I still don't like this best of 3, but there have been a lot of upsets. There have been a lot of upsets, and one of the things I was told by MLS is that they did all kinds of statistical tests, and that this playoff format was supposed to eliminate the chance of upsets, which is what fans love. I think fans love when the underdog wins. But in this year, I think we've seen a lot of upsets. Minnesota upset a higher ranked team. We've seen Columbus upset a higher ranked team.
Yep. Yeah, no, it has certainly been that. Look at the Galaxy in the lineup, basically repeat lineup. Nothing surprising. McCarthy at the back, Yamane, Garces, Yoshida, Nelson, Delgado, Cerrillo, Puig, Peck, Joveljic, and Paintsil. That is how it lined up, and Garces was the only question mark about it, but Greg Vanney pretty much answered that on the Wednesday before and said, hey, listen, he's going to play. Everybody seems like they're good to go. Listen, we call this team 100% healthy. They're not 100% healthy. They have, little bumps and bruises, and some of them will be limping, and maybe you'll even see some surgeries in the offseason, right? All that stuff can happen whenever it is. But bottom line is everybody seems ready to answer the bell whenever it comes. And I think that's what you saw from the LA Galaxy. But just the way this game started, one of the craziest, wackiest goals I have seen in a playoff game, let alone an MLS game. Whenever Zach Steffen comes out to clear a ball that had been played a little bit too far in front of Gabriel Peck. Peck just closes down the space. Steffen goes to clear it, clears it right off Peck, and it goes into the goal. Now, I'm gonna complain a little bit, because there are some former players who are like, I try to defend this league. This is not Galaxy players. This is just MLS players and people who maybe are outspoken anyway, and probably
like Eric Ronaldo, for example.
I'm not gonna say who, but said, I try to defend this league, but this is just ridiculous. And it's like, I've seen crazy goals happen in every league in it doesn't matter what level, whether it's England, whether it's Spain, whether it's, for the French, it doesn't matter. Stupid goals like this happen. Bottom line is Peck gets incredibly lucky that ball bounces off of him and goes into the net and spins in the right direction and moves in the way it's supposed to. I mean, Stefan gets really unlucky that it happens, but bottom line, it was a hustle play from Peck. He didn't give up on it. He chased it down. The ball ends up in the back of the net, right?
Well, two things on that real quickly. Zach Stefan never expected Peck to do that. Never expected him to step in front of the ball. Most of the time, offensive players will come near the goalkeeper to make sure he handles the ball. They don't want to get hit by a kick, and so they step away.
Right.
I think that's what Stefan thought, and credit to Gabriel Peck. I'm surprised more players don't take the hit and try to do that and try to deflect the ball into a positive position. It was a lot of things coming together, and it was quirky, but I am kind of surprised that more players don't take that chance because you see what happened.
Yeah, and it goes, by the way, the best start the LA Galaxy could have possibly hoped for, Kevin, right? I mean, the best start. You're talking, you're 8 minutes in and the LA Galaxy are winning 1-0. Now, in this particular game, just about 11 minutes later, Colorado comes back and gets the goal that draws them level, right? So now you're 1-1 in this, and this is what you expected from Colorado, that they weren't going to go quietly. But having said that, the Galaxy very much in control for much of this game. Colorado had some surges, but if you look at sort of how the Galaxy finished things out and how they played in that first half, you can go through that first half with the Galaxy having most of the attacking and everything. It doesn't flip until the very end of that first half, where you see Colorado starting to gain some of that momentum, starting to look a little bit dangerous. It's 1-1 now. Colorado's smelling some blood in the water. And it was something that I think Alex and I talked about on Wednesday night instead of Thursday night, but Wednesday night. We talked a little bit about it, which was if the Galaxy can get Joseph Paintsil going, then that's the next level, right? We're talking about how do you get the Galaxy firing on all cylinders? How do you make them the most unstoppable, unbeatable team? There are two things. Oh, look, I got like red ink all over me already. That's wonderful.
Are you bleeding?
No, it's not blood. I swear. It looks like it. This is the Halloween one. It's just red ink. I was. Oh yeah. Look, see, I got it on my neck too. Oh, wonderful. Guess I'm taking a shower after this. No, but looking at the Galaxy and what they were able to do, if you want them, is number one was getting Joseph Paintsil started, getting him scoring goals, getting him involved, and two was the defense, right? If the defense can step up and start playing difficult MLS playoff style defense, then something can probably happen with the LA Galaxy. Then they're putting themselves in a position. Well, the defense played really well in that first game. The second game, again, a pretty good defensive effort. They didn't panic. They played a little softer than maybe I like, but I also think that was probably a product of the situation, right? You're not in a do or die game. You want Colorado to come because you think you can exploit space in behind them. So you're willing to absorb a little bit, and you don't want to give them any easy passing lanes. You want to make everything difficult for them. I can understand that, and I think it worked well because the Galaxy were able to pull it off. But Joseph Paintsil able to step up at the edge of the box, getting that ball on the left-hand side, cutting inside a little bit, using his right foot, and finally finding that shot that goes across the face of goal into the corner. It bounces off the post. How many times has he hit the post this year? Like umpteen millions of times, especially recently in probably these last 2 or 3 months. Nothing seemed like it would go in, but this one hits the post and goes in. Right, that to me is one, the key to getting Joseph Paintsil really involved in how the LA Galaxy play for the last, hopefully you're looking at 3 games for the Galaxy here of the season, and seeing that confidence come from him, seeing him be able to score the game winner in that, and to put the Galaxy up 2-1 right before halftime. Colorado thought they had done all the work. Colorado were happy with the 1-1. They were putting pressure on the Galaxy at the end, and at the very last minute, the Galaxy come in, put that ball in the net, and now it's 2-1. Going in 2-1 at halftime for me, Kevin, is always so much different than even if you score right after halftime. You want them thinking it's happening again. Bad things are happening.
And Paintsil almost had another goal. He just missed that far post in the second half. And the Apple TV people voted him player of the game, which was interesting because, there were a lot of players that could have gotten that, and they gave it to Paintsil because his goal put the team ahead to stay. And he was dangerous all night. And Greg Vanny has talked about that repeatedly, the idea of you got to get Joseph Paintsil going, and he is a goal scorer. And the best way to get a goal scorer going is to have him score goals. So I think Greg Vanny is very hopeful that, as you said, this will lift his confidence a little bit. We don't know if he's going away on the international break. We don't know how it's a long flight to Africa for him, but whether that would be a good or bad thing, maybe going to play with his national team and getting to feel even better about himself, maybe doing something in that game and breaking up that 3-week break. I know the Galaxy talked about the possibility of having some sort of scrimmage against somebody during that break.
By the way, Greg Vanny basically said inter-squad scrimmage because he was saying we're not going to bring anybody from outside whenever there's playoffs on the line, and you don't need anybody trying to be a hero in front of the Galaxy coaches and breaking somebody's ankle, right? So it's more like I imagine they'll play like a Galaxy 2 team, right? The lower level team, bring them in, put some of the guys on, make them play each other. But no, it's going to be good. That break is a problem. It's a stupid schedule. Sophie and I were texting today with the hammer. We were like, this is a ridiculous schedule. And having 3 weeks off as you're building all this momentum. Look at all the momentum that is building, Kevin, because if you watched any of these games, they've all been exciting games. Fun to watch. You're like, oh, man, this is really leading to something. But if that all ended this week, instead of having it go an extra week for some teams, which it's going to, I think you can maintain some of that momentum, even if you play the semifinal round. Right now, if that was coming up this week instead of 3 weeks from basically now, and we'll get you a schedule and everything where we think the Galaxy have not finalized that schedule yet in terms of when they will play. We just know it's one of 2 days. We'll talk about that here in a second.
And it's momentum for the teams. The Galaxy feel really good about themselves right now. Everybody's healthy. I'm sure Greg Vanny would like to play every week. Look, you play every week for 8 months. And then all of a sudden, the most important part of the season, it's like, we'll see you in 3 weeks. It hurts the teams.
Right.
Okay, it hurts the players. I've talked to enough coaches throughout the league that I know that there is a rhythm involved, especially at this time of the season when everybody's tired. There's a rhythm involved, and you're messing up that rhythm. But also for fans, and MLS doesn't need you and me. They got us already. They got the hardcore fans. They need the casual fans who look up and say, wait a minute. I just saw the Dodgers play every other day or every day.
Right.
And now you're telling me that you guys are in your playoffs and you're going to take a 3-week break in the middle. And then I'm supposed to kind of come back, like you said, come back in a couple of days and find out when the next game is. You know what? Casual fans are going, NHL's on over here. I'm going to go watch that. They just don't understand it. And when we can't explain it to them.
No, there's, it's just a money grab. Plus, you could have also played 3 games in a week, right? You could have played Saturday, Wednesday, Sunday.
Or what if you hadn't taken the whole month for the stupid Leagues Cup and had that month to play with now?
No, because now they're walking funny because they got all the cash stuffed in their pants from that game. I mean, it's one of those. I get it.
I hate Leagues Cup, by the way.
I can tell. I know. And I don't. Just remember the Galaxy and MLS front-loaded the season. One of the reasons the Galaxy were so successful in the season is because they had a good first 2/3 of the season before the Leagues Cup break, because that's what it was. Basically, they played almost 2/3 of the season before they went into their summer transfer window, negating the summer transfer window to some degree this year. But if they hadn't have front-loaded all of that stuff like at the beginning, that they could have spaced stuff out a little bit more here on the back end. But again, listen, I don't think there's any great answers except that we all agreed let's not do 3, the best of 3 to start things off. If you're going to do anything, just do home and away, home and away, home and away. And if you're the higher seed there, then you probably get the weekend game. And if you're the lower seed, then guess what? You're playing midweek. You're the one that's hosting the midweek one, right? It would go away to the midweek and then back. So you could do it. It's just
the other thing that would do is we'd now be through the conference semifinals. So we'd go to the international break, come back with the finals and MLS Cup, and everybody would have the same amount of rest. Here's the problem. The Galaxy have 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. They're going to play, they could play a team eventually, LA.
We know who they're playing, though, right? We know that they're playing Minnesota, and Minnesota also has 3 weeks off. So that is the saving grace, yes.
Which is good, but other teams do not have that situation. LAFC is going to play Vancouver on Friday in a winner-take-all match, and the team they're going to play has already been off for a week.
Yes,
Seattle, and so it's just not fair. If everybody had the same amount of rest, let's say it does screw up your rhythm, which I think it does. But if it screws up the other team's rhythm, then at least you're equally screwed up.
Right.
It's one team doesn't get the same amount of time off as the other team, and there's benefits and there's detractions to that, but it's not equal. If we played home and away, 2-leg, we'd be in the conference finals by now, and everybody would be equal, and it would be a much better situation. But no, we have to do this goofy 3-game thing, which no other league in the entire world in soccer does anything like this.
No, by the way, I do have to interrupt. Gary wrote in the chat, I got Meatloaf from Albertsons for the first time today, and it's rad. My brain immediately went to Meatloaf the singer, and I would do anything for
and what was he doing at Albertsons?
But I won't do that. No, sorry, that's it. Is that the one where objects in the rearview mirror may appear closer than they are? That's my Meatloaf.
Who sings that song?
Meatloaf.
Let's keep it that way.
Oh, rocked right into that one. That's an old school burn too.
Yeah.
That was we were doing that one in grade school. I remember that one. So, by the way, Gary $5 super chat says $5 for the new red pen fund. Listen. As long as we're all sharing secrets tonight, and I just sang Meatloaf for you, that's my wife's red pen, and I'm gonna be in trouble. So if you guys don't hear from me for a little while, it's because she will. I'm sure she'll take revenge on me somehow destroying her red pen. I don't know how I did it, but
send in more super chats because Corner of the Galaxy is now buried in red ink, literally.
yeah, that's exactly what it is.
And by the way, you said old school burn, that you were using that in grade school. I meant when you were in grade school, I'd already graduated college. It was on my third job.
Yes.
So.
When did you graduate high school?
I graduated high school in 1977.
Okay, and I
college
graduated
in 1981.
I graduated in 1991. I was born in 1981. 1999 is whenever I graduated high school. I know that. I was thinking about 1981, which is when I was born. Anyway, Josh sounded like Hank Hill singing. Greatly, Debbie. by the way, look at this. Debbie says, "Great meatloaf, Josh." The meatloaf. Yes, thank you, Debbie. I appreciate it, and I am available for weddings, just in case you were wondering. And bar mitzvahs, kids' birthdays.
Does your wife know that? Does your wife know you're available for weddings? She's gonna be more mad over that than the red pen.
My wife and I have a rule where everybody's allowed to have 2 weddings. I've had 2, so she still gets another one. I don't know who she's gonna pick. Maybe it's me. Maybe I get a second. Maybe I get a third one with her. But she gets to pick, so that's how it works. No, going back to the Galaxy, and I apologize, sidetracked. But Meatloaf is Meatloaf. If you look at just what the Galaxy were able to do, and again, 2-1 going all the way into the 90th minute, then Riqui Puig turns on the Jets. The fact the Galaxy can once again bring in guys like Gaston Bergman, you can bring in Marco Royce, you're up 2-1, you're able to put some things away. The Galaxy then starts stretching out Colorado. Colorado looked exhausted. Again, okay, so here's my theory. Let me give you my theory, and then Greg Vanney, I asked him the question. I don't think I got the answer that I wanted, but you know how that is. You're like, I'm expecting him to say this. I sound smart. Hold on, give me a second, and I don't think he quite. But for me, the reason the Galaxy are so good in Colorado and have been able to take Colorado to the woodshed multiple times is their possession makes Colorado chase. Their possession at home in Colorado makes Colorado tired running around chasing things. They also had injuries to Cole Bassett and Jordy Mihailovic. You could tell there was a talent gap there. Kevin Cabral got subbed off, I think in that either at halftime or I think it was halftime he got subbed off. He's not the guy. He's not the guy that they want, and the Galaxy are still thankful forever that they were able to sell. By the way, Galaxy's still paying some of his salary for him to play
Most
against them.
Salary, yeah,
for him to pay against them in this game. So for me, looking at it, very complete. John Nelson, I thought again had a good game. The defense had a good game. John McCarthy came and talked to us a little bit afterwards. I was joking around with him, like a little lighter note. Was it good to, John McCarthy is always very straight ahead, Kevin. He's very much I only think one game at a time. I only want what's best for the team, which is good. I like it, the whole deal. But I'm like, hey, John, on a lighter note, because it was like my third question. On a lighter note, was it better? You were a little busier tonight. Did that feel better? Because you actually had to make some saves and stuff like that. He goes, I don't care if I never touch the ball as long as we win, I don't care about any of that. He goes, as long as my defense is playing well, as long as I do not care. So looking at that, but I talked to Greg Vanney. I said, what about this possession? Is it because you guys have so much possession? And he was like, maybe, but I think he was talking about more just how they manage the game. And also, I think the Galaxy are in good shape. They are fairly healthy at this point, which is something you could never say about last year. And so you're seeing an LA Galaxy team. The hammer always says peak at the right time. Don't peak too soon, peak at the right time. To me, the key to this was Joseph Paintsil scoring. In this game, the most important thing that happened was Joseph Paintsil scoring. We talked to him afterwards. He wants to win an MLS Cup. He talked about leaving a legacy, that it is part of leaving a legacy for those who come after him, that they understand that the LA Galaxy wins championships and it's their job to create that legacy this year, right? These guys are laser focused on 1, the next game that comes up, and 2, winning an MLS Cup. That is it. That is all they're thinking. Whatever Greg Vanney has done, whatever Will Kuntz has done, whatever the coaching staff, the front office, however they have assembled this, these guys are 100%, if you could, 110% bought in to what Greg Vanney is preaching right now. They're buying into the system. The Galaxy have a system that is devastating to most teams, especially teams that want to sit back and counter. The Galaxy can just pass you into sleep. And I think their advancement and what we've been able to see through all of this, these last games, and the Galaxy now, again, on a 2-game winning streak whenever you look at it. Galaxy will play Minnesota. That's possibly a 3-game winning streak. In order to win it all, you sort of have to, you can lose a game, but the Galaxy are already past the point where they can lose a game. Can't lose any games from here on out. 3 games remaining. If you win that 3rd game, you hoist the MLS Cup.
Now it really is must win. And by the way, you talked about injuries. I'm trying to think of the injuries publicly that we know about are guys that seem to remain questionable. I think Royce is still having problems. I think it was a hamstring. Because I would have to think that he would be in the starting lineup if he could go 90 minutes. And Audi, I guess, has not come back and proven himself 90 minutes fit, although he appears to be. And then maybe Neil. Did Neil lose his starting job because of performance or because of injury?
Neil lost his starting spot because Garces is the better center back right now. So performance. I mean, but maybe not even his performance, just Garces. Garces is the better center back. Aude is really good, and I think that, again, Aude will be a major part of what the LA Galaxy do next year and everything like that. But John Nelson has turned into a very well-rounded left back, right? You get the attack with him, you get the smartness with him. Right now, Vanny is very much playing the familiarity card, right? Which is these guys are comfortable. And the hot hand. These guys are
why change things? You may say this guy is a better player. I've seen him in training, but it's working with John Nelson. So why mess that up?
Right. No, it's 100%. Raphael, by the way, $5 super chat. Leagues Cup is done with Champions League. 3 weeks off is insane. Get rid of Leagues Cup and refocus on US Open Cup. MLS needs to do better. Don't necessarily disagree. Gary, $2 super chat says pen recommendations. The Pilot Friction erasable pens. I mean, right now, Gary, the erasable would be helpful. It seems like I don't know what I murdered, but it's something small. So maybe I caught a fish and gutted it here on the table. I don't know. It's just not right.
By the way, that super chat, a good point about the U.S. Open Cup. It doesn't make you stop play for 3 weeks.
No, it doesn't.
Kind of interspersed in, sort of like the FA Cup.
Yeah. Aaron, by the way, $2 super chat. Josh, sing "This Is L.A." "This Is L.A." isn't really sung; it's shouted. So no, Aaron. Adam, $5 super chat. Galaxy has been best team so far in the playoffs from teams left. Absolutely, I don't disagree with that. I keep trying to sort of do it. I wanted to get to one here because we can sort of start to sneak this in as we're talking about it. But one of the first ones that we got was from, come on, you can find it, from Adam. And Adam, $2 super chat says, any thoughts on the probability Vancouver wins on Friday? Let's look real quick at the big bracket here.
I would not be surprised. I think Vancouver's really hot right now.
I'm not going to be surprised either. So here's what we have as we know it right now. The teams that have advanced: Seattle, waiting for the winner of LAFC Vancouver. Minnesota and the LA Galaxy are matched up. It's actually the only complete matchup in the entire bracket so far. You're still waiting for Miami and Atlanta to play a Game 3. You're waiting for Orlando and Charlotte to play a Game 3. And the New York Red Bulls beat the Columbus Crew, which if you watched any of those games, that was just craziness there, certainly at the end, and went into the penalty kicks and went back and forth there a couple times. Looked like Columbus was going to pull it out in penalty kicks, and then there were saves, and then New York came back. Crazy game. So Red Bulls, and they're waiting for the winner of Cincinnati, New York City.
But Columbus's loss means that a new MLS Cup champion this year.
A new MLS Cup champion, and as we've told you, if the LA Galaxy, here's where the LA Galaxy could play away right now as it goes. If LAFC advances and then beats Seattle, and the LA Galaxy advance past Minnesota, then LA would be at LAFC, right? The Galaxy would have to go to BMO in order to face LAFC. If Vancouver comes out of that, or Seattle ends up coming out of that, then the Galaxy would host that game, right? So that's a possible away game for the LA Galaxy. The other one is MLS Cup. Well, the only team now that the Galaxy wouldn't host would be Miami, because Columbus finished above the Galaxy in the Supporters Shield standings. So the Galaxy would have had to travel to Columbus. With Columbus out, the Galaxy now will host MLS Cup as long as it's anybody else but Miami. And right now, looking at Miami and Atlanta and watching how that goes, it was funny because I was seeing Galaxy fans. They're like, we're Vancouver and Atlanta fans coming up, real quick here. So I can understand that, but that's how it lays out right now. You have Game 3s for LAFC and Vancouver. You have Game 3 for Miami and Atlanta, Orlando and Charlotte, and Cincinnati and New York City. So still a lot to be determined. Those games coming up this weekend, Friday night. Do you know why LAFC played on a Sunday and then is playing on a Friday? I know the answer to this.
I'm guessing USC.
No, it is that BMO is hosting a concert for I believe it's a Korean band, a K-pop band, because my wife was going to it. And so so I knew they're doing that Saturday and Sunday. So the only date available to them was Friday. So that's why they have to do that on Friday. No,
way to have priorities. By the way, can I answer that super chat real quick about whether Vancouver can win?
Yeah, go ahead.
As you know, I have to cover LAFC. I spend a lot of time with LAFC, almost as much as I do with the Galaxy. So I'm pretty familiar with them. They, in my mind, they still, Galaxy notwithstanding, I still think LAFC may have the deepest roster of any team not named Inter Miami. However, they are not performing very well. They trailed San Jose, the worst team in league history, by some measurements. They trailed them for 60 minutes in a game that they had to win in the regular season final. It wasn't until stoppage time they got the goal they needed to advance against the worst team in league history. Then the Vancouver game, if in this Vancouver series, if this had been the old two-leg aggregate score, LAFC would be out.
Right.
It was 2-1 at home. One of the goals from LAFC was on a penalty kick. They gave up an away goal late. Then they go to Vancouver. Vancouver played a very good game. 2 of the goals were own goals, but they were dangerous balls. So Vancouver wins that game. Remember, Vancouver had to go on the road in the wild card game, even though they won home field advantage. They had to go on the road, and they won 5-0 in Portland in a hostile environment. I think they're playing really, really well right now. Vancouver, by the way, had one of the final regular season, LAFC's final regular season road game was in Vancouver. It took an Elie Sanchez goal in stoppage time for LAFC to win that. LAFC is not, again, talent notwithstanding, I think they're really, really good. They're just not playing very well. Olivier Giroud has not gotten into any rhythm or any chemistry with his new teammates. LAFC is not playing very well.
Right.
Vancouver is playing out of their minds.
Right.
I think if you were going to bet that game, if I was betting, I would bet LAFC for sure.
Yeah.
Can Vancouver win? Would I be surprised? Not in the least.
By the way, a lot of guessing on whether and what band it is. So I texted my wife, and I got jams. Apparently, is a Korean music lover as well. 17 is the answer. 17 is the name of the band that will be playing on Saturday, and I believe Sunday, or at least Saturday for sure. But there's another concert, or they're playing for the second night on Sunday. So,
well, see, that seems like it ripped off Genesee at 17.
It very well could. Okay, so we have that. That's sort of where that sits for what you're seeing here. Now, we do not know and will not know until the first round is completed. So the last game is going to be at 5 p.m. on Saturday night, right? 5 p.m. Local time, 8 p.m. East Coast time, which means 8 p.m. in Miami is when the game will be played against Atlanta. That'll be when that game concludes. So around 7:30ish, we do expect that MLS will announce when the LA Galaxy will play and host Minnesota United. We already know that it's going to be one of 2 dates. It's either Saturday, November 23rd, or Sunday, November 24th. Then the conference finals are hosted on Saturday, November 30th, or Sunday, December 1st, and then you have MLS Cup on Saturday, December 7th, just in case you're planning things out. On the LA Galaxy side of the bracket, just 3 more wins, as we have pointed out. The LA Galaxy would play Minnesota. They'd play the winner of Seattle, and then Seattle plays against the winner of LAFC Vancouver. So if the Galaxy would get to that game, they would face one of those 3 teams that are there, and then should they get past that, then you're in an MLS Cup, and a win there would hoist a 6th MLS Cup for the LA Galaxy. Yes. Anything?
Which means they have to redo all of the logos everywhere.
Yes, they would.
Because of the stars.
Those poor people. But I'm sure they're looking forward to it. By the way, $5 super chat from Papa. Shout out to Uncle Tony and Cousin Titi. Turned them into fans, and they've been to every game this season. Love this show as well. Thank you. We appreciate that $5 super chat. Certainly always appreciate that. So that's where we at. Yeah, 17 2 nights. That's what that chat room is saying. So good. I'm glad I was able to break
that's
that.
34.
The 34. Yeah. If they play twice,
right.
If they're divided by 2, it's a decimal point, and that's more difficult. Yes, I
just think back to when LAFC launched and Bob Bradley was here, and their ownership group was like, "This is the finest stadium in MLS," which arguably it might have been. And look at the turf, and we're going to use the same turf at our training complex, and we're sparing no expense. And this is soccer full steam ahead. And now, we can't play the most important game of the year because we have a K-pop band coming.
You have to play on a Friday night. You have to play on Friday night. This is their most
Really?
important game, and they have to play on a Friday night. How's that? How's traffic out on Friday night in LA? By the way, So it's like-
32-52 might be like 11 and a half people.
Yeah. By the way, I think LAFC is going to get by Vancouver. I think it's going to be a real uphill battle. I texted you and said, hey, did LAFC like tank that game just so that way they wouldn't have 3 weeks off, so that way they could close the gap a little bit on some of these things. They knew they had a game at home. I don't think there was panic, but I felt like there wasn't a lot of urgency there. And
that I think they had won 5 or 6 in a row lead going into that game. But when the Vancouver game there, they didn't look like, since the LAFC lost to LAFC to the Galaxy at Dignity Health Sports Park,
right.
LAFC hasn't lost, but they until this game. But they really haven't looked good in a lot of those games. Again, the talent is there, and they've done this over the years where they've hit a skid, and it's usually a month to 6 weeks where they just look terrible. Maybe they'll come out of that in time, but. I agree with you. If I was betting, I would bet pretty heavily on LAFC. But if Vancouver won, would I be surprised? No. I think they can do it.
Well, also looking at Minnesota now, here's the clash. Here's the clash with Minnesota is that Minnesota's more of a defensive-minded team, right? And so you saw that. You saw that against RSL. That game was 0-0. Minnesota won on penalty kicks the first round, and then it was 1-1. Minnesota won on penalty kicks in that second game.
So what does that tell you? What does that tell you?
I don't know.
Don't go to penalty kicks.
Don't go to penalty kicks with Minnesota. I agree. Don't go to penalty kicks with Minnesota. Remember, also in this next round, you will play 90 minutes, then you'll play extra time, and then you will go to penalty kicks. There's some, I want to be cautious with that. Seattle advancing past Houston, you could look at Seattle and saying they're not playing well, which I don't think offensively they're playing well at all. Jordan Morris is injured on that as well. So they're not firing on all cylinders. You're not seeing that. But they were in sort of a defensive battle with Houston, and Houston couldn't score. And Seattle's very good defensively, and Houston's very good defensively. I think Minnesota falls into the pretty good defensively as well, because RSL does have some talented players. RSL also... had some I thought some questionable play in a whole bunch of areas. Houston had some crazy 2 red cards. They had 2 games, and Houston had 2 red cards. To your point, Seattle had to go to play a 10-man Houston team and still had to take them to penalty kicks whenever it came down to it, right? So it's really hard to gauge some of these much lower scoring. It looks like Seattle is struggling offensively. It looks like Minnesota is struggling offensively. And can the Galaxy then... If these teams aren't going to score a lot of goals offensively, Kevin, does that mean they sit back? And if they sit back, do the Galaxy have the horses to be able to get them to break open? Colorado was a really good matchup for the Galaxy. We talked about it when the Galaxy fell to second, and then Colorado was the matchup. We're like, this is a good matchup for it. I don't think the Galaxy cared whether they played RSL or Minnesota. I don't think it matters to them. I really don't think that they are scared of anybody in this entire bracket, and that includes LAFC. I don't think they're inviting the challenge, whatever that challenge is.
However, after that Minnesota game when they won, I texted a friend of mine who's one of the Minnesota United owners, and I said, "I'll see you in Carson." And he said, his quote was, I'm not going to tell you who he is, but he sent me a text that I'm sure the Galaxy are not happy to play us instead of Real Salt Lake. And then he went on to talk about how, despite the fact they have this 3-week break, he said the Galaxy will be more rested, but we may be sharper because in September they sent 7 players, Minnesota United did, 7 players to international duty, and in October they sent 5. So they're likely to send a few more guys out for international duty. They have a couple of Finns, some Canadians, New Zealand player. They may send some more players out. That guy from New Zealand's got a long flight back, though.
Right.
So, that could be an issue. I'm not so sure that the Galaxy. I agree with you. I think they're ready to take on whomever. Minnesota has lost on the road once since. They've lost once period since August 24th, but they're unbeaten in 7 road games dating to early July. You know who they lost to? The Galaxy.
There you go.
At Dignity Health Sports Park. The Galaxy have not lost there all season. The last time that Minnesota United won in Carson was in 2022. I don't think the Galaxy are intimidated by Minnesota. I don't think they would have been intimidated by Real Salt Lake. I think you're right. I mean, whoever they got, I think they were prepared for.
Yeah, and I think that goes all the way through the Western Conference too. So I think the worst matchup for them might actually be Vancouver. Vancouver's hot. Vancouver's playing well. The Galaxy took care of Vancouver in some ways, but I worry. The Galaxy would be at home. That would be the big advantage that sort of does it. Vancouver's a tough team. Seattle's going to be tough if you play against Seattle because Seattle is very good defensively, and having to break them down and having to be physical through them and having to keep them from sort of doing their counters and what they're trying to do. So Seattle would be tough. LAFC, obviously, I think there's a mental hurdle there that the Galaxy need to get over. I'm not saying they're not prepared to do that this year. And again, I think my prediction was that the LA Galaxy, and this is documented, that the LA Galaxy would lose the Rose Bowl game, but that they would beat LAFC at the last meeting that was I think was it in September or whenever it was. I can't remember exactly 100%, but the last meeting at Dignity Health Sports Park, they would win that game, and then the Galaxy would beat them in the Western Conference Finals in the playoffs. That was sort of the way that I thought it might go. So we'll see if that continues to do that. I don't know. I mean, looking at this, your opinions are going to change game to game, but bottom line is it's one and done now, baby. This is it. This is where the rubber meets the road. The Galaxy will host Minnesota either on the 23rd or 24th, and then they will get to play that game, and it will go for 90 minutes, and if it doesn't, then it'll go for another 30 minutes, and then when that's not done, it goes to penalty kicks, and somebody's season is over, and somebody gets to go on.
Well, and in case you're wondering, when you talk about the international break, again, in September, Minnesota United sent 7 players out on international duty. No MLS team sent more. So you might be wondering, well, what about the Galaxy? It's very strange. The Galaxy have such a good team in the way they're playing. And it's not just that the collective is better than the individuals, because they have great individual players. Gabriel Peck, Riqui Puig. I mean, Marco Royce. Are there players that you would rather have than some of these guys? No. But the fact of the matter is the Galaxy sent just one senior international out on international duty in the last couple of breaks, and that was Joseph Paintsil. And the last time, I don't even think he left Southern California because of some sort of visa or paperwork issue. They did send a guy named Ruben Ramos Jr. Out as a U20 player.
Right.
But Paintsil is the only guy who's really in danger, I think, of going anywhere on international duty.
Paintsil went, and then he couldn't travel to the next game, so he was able to go to Ghana, but then he didn't go to the next game. So then he ended up doing all his paperwork and then flying back. By the way, to close up the 4-1 win, this stat, with Paintsil, Peck, and Pujol scoring in the win over the Rapids, it marked the 4th time this season, both regular and playoffs, that all 3 designated players have scored on a goal in the same game. In 20 MLS matches played, both regular and playoffs, in the starting lineup together dating back to March 23rd, Peck has recorded 12 goals and 10 assists. Paintsil has notched 7 goals and 9 assists, and Puig has registered 11 goals and 14 assists. Notably, Paintsil, 2 goals, 2 assists, Peck, 2 goals, 6 assists, and Puig, 7 goals, 1 assist, combined for 20 goal contributions, 11 goals, 9 assists in 4 matches played across all competitions during the 2024 campaign against Colorado. So, domination of Colorado from beginning to end for the LA Galaxy and the Calif. So I don't know. Again, there's a way to sort of look at this, and I've been watching like polls and how they derate polls and do all this stuff. I'm trying to like derate the LA Galaxy right now because Colorado was bad, so you have to knock some blocks out from underneath the Galaxy. Say they're not as good as they looked. It's just Colorado was not a good team. And also a team, by the way, that lost 14 games, Colorado, in the regular season. Didn't stop them from having a Coach of the Year candidate, though, for sure. I'll get to that in a second. But looking at the Galaxy, I am of the opinion they've probably shown the best out of any team in the playoffs, and that's even whenever you discount what Colorado sort of faced.
Yeah, and certainly way better than Inter Miami, which is supposed to be the best team in the league. By the way, I have a totally useless stat as well. Actually, your stats was pretty good, but Riqui Puig is just the 2nd player in MLS history to score a brace in the first 2 games of a playoff tournament.
Yep.
I don't know what that means. I'm not quite sure what it means, but in the second game, he scored both. In the first game, I think he had 1 goal in stoppage time, and then he had 2 in stoppage time this time. So I bet you if you look that up, he's probably the only player to have 3 stoppage time goals in the first 2 games of a playoff series.
Very well could be. Oh, the first 2 games of a 3-legged or a best of 3 series. You have to get real specific.
Yes, certainly.
In 2 matches played in the 2024 MLS Cup playoffs, Riqui Puig has recorded 5 goal contributions, 4 goals and 1 assist. Puig has totaled 34 goal contributions, 17 goals, 17 assists, and 34 games played, 33 games started across all competitions for the LA Galaxy during the 2024 campaign. And so just a lot of success for the LA Galaxy and certainly their designated players. We talked about it in the regular season of how much those guys have been available and what they were able to do. So that was big. The other thing that happened today was that one of the postseason awards was announced. And that was that Gabriel Peck was named the newcomer of the year as a surprise, Kevin, to both you and I, who we thought for sure this would swing to Luis Suarez and everything else that was going on. We're like, oh, it's Suarez. Also, Luca Oriano from Cincinnati was in on this as well. Those were the three finalists: Peck, Suarez, and Oriano. I would like to point this out because I don't know that a lot of people pointed it out. Gabriel Peck won every single vote. There are 3 votes, and that then get averaged in order to produce the winner. You get a media vote, a player vote, and a club vote. Gabriel Peck received almost 50% of the media vote. He received almost 34% of the player vote, and 29%, almost 30% of the club vote. So averaging 37.53%. Luis Suarez garnished 27.63% in that particular case. So it's not always
that doesn't add up to 100.
No, it doesn't, and that's because they're averaging and doing other things. Don't worry. Don't stress yourself out trying to figure it out. It's not to be understood.
The media vote stuns me because I thought Gabriel Peck would I thought it would be the opposite way. I think he played well enough to earn the respect of his peers, and I thought players would vote for him, and they did, a third. I thought the clubs looked around and said, my God, this guy, for what he came in at, really valuable, changed the way this team played. I thought the clubs would be aware of that. I really thought that the majority of the media, because so many of the guys who get media votes are not full-time soccer writers. They do other things, and they get their ballot, and maybe they haven't seen the Galaxy this year. They look down and see Luis Suarez. I know that guy. He's really good. He's got to be the newcomer of the year. Or even if they don't do that, they look at the stats and say, my God, he's the leading scorer on the best team in league history. He's got to get the vote. And they were smart enough not to do that because it's newcomer of the year. And yeah, it's kind of rookie of the year, but are you really a rookie when you've played in 5 World Cups for Uruguay and you're one of 4 players in history to score 400 goals for a club and country? I don't know. I thought Gabriel Peck was the right vote, and I agree with you. I'm a little surprised that he actually won.
Yeah, but it's listen, well deserved. I thought he was. Somebody said that Gabriel Peck is the reason there's an MLS Newcomer of the Year award, right? Like he's like the poster boy for what really the Newcomer of the Year should be.
I'll go for that. Yeah,
and it was like it fits too well, and I thought for sure that Suarez would do it. I mean, now Inter Miami people are wondering whether or not Lionel Messi is going to be named the MVP of the league. They're like, wait a minute, not everybody thinks that everything that Miami does is perfect, and that they're totally discounting the fact that Lionel Messi played in what, around half the games for Miami this year, right? So
a little more than that, but they actually have a better record without Lionel Messi than they do with him.
Which means, how can you be the most valuable player in a team if they play better with you than without you? It's a stupid argument. I don't really care how it ends up being. The bottom line is that. And it was asked about, I think, after the game, just about Riqui Puig and after his 2 goals and stoppage time and everything. It's like, should Riqui have been named MVP? Should that have happened? Or should he have been one of the finalists for MVP? I mean, again, the playoffs are going to make a lot of people look like they weren't paying attention because everybody's now paying attention to the LA Galaxy. Gabriel Peck. And by the way, Gabriel Peck was, he knew he won this award last week sometime. If you saw the LA Galaxy's video that they put out, it was a video of them at their team photo, and they did their team photo last week sometime. I don't know which day, the whole deal. But if you watch, there is LA Galaxy general manager Will Kuntz is there, right, Kevin? And he's there. Now, there's some background to this. Will Kuntz announced whenever Gabriel Peck had been named to the All-Star team, and I think he did it in English, right? And apparently Peck didn't understand what was happening. Somebody explained it to him afterwards. It was sort of like, hey, you're going to the All-Star. He goes, what? And if you remember, you saw that video a little bit there. So this time, to make sure that Peck knew, Will Kuntz just pulled out the Portuguese. So he pulled out the Portuguese in order to make sure that Gabriel Peck knew what was going on. And so a nice move by Senor Kuntz there. Pulling that in and really making sure that the Gabriel Peck knew what was going on. And that just nice little moment there. So really interesting.
Well, and Gabriel Peck deserves this award, but is Suarez a candidate for MVP? Because now that you bring it up, again, they did have the best record in MLS history, and we can talk about they bought that, and they had the 5 Barcelona players and all that stuff. But when you talk about Messi, and it seems like everyone just assumes he's going to win it. When you think about Suarez, his stats are really good,
right?
And goals and assists, and he was the one that carried the water when Messi was gone. They don't set the record with Messi playing every game. They set it because Luis Suarez was there and took up slack when Messi was gone. I mean, I did not vote, and we
and
talked about why I didn't vote.
Busquets and Alba, and there's a whole bunch of guys that have
But
been really good.
I could see Suarez being maybe a better pick than Messi.
I think they would. I think they'd split the vote. I don't remember if he's the finalist for that or not. I don't believe
Okay.
so. I think he's newcomer, and I think that was sort of like people were like, "Oh, okay, that's good."
We'll give him that.
One of the other postseason awards that, of course, we're keeping a really close eye on, only because Greg Vanney was not named as a finalist for Coach of the Year, is Coach of the Year, of course. And with Wilfred Nancy being eliminated, and with the LA Galaxy eliminating Chris Armas, that means there's just one Coach of the Year candidate left, and that's Tata Martino. I think Greg Vanney has a hit list. I think that this graphic is Greg Vanney's. He's crossing these guys out, being like, "You're next, Tata. I'm coming for you." I think we're totally overplaying that. I don't know that Greg Vanney cares about it, but he's a competitive guy, and I think him being overlooked for it. Yeah, he says he doesn't. Yeah. But
there is no way that Greg Vanney is not in that discussion. He's not even a finalist. Okay, he just put up 9 goals. He beat the guy that got the nomination over him 9-1 in the playoffs, the most important time of the year.
Right.
Greg Vanney took a team that won 8 games last year, and he has them third in the Supporter Shield. Now he has them in the playoffs. They're the best team in the league right now in the playoffs today. We'll see what happens tomorrow. There's no way that Greg Vanney, I'm sorry, there's no way Greg Vanney's not Coach of the Year. And you can talk about Tata Martino, and people I've heard the argument, look, if you have the best record in league history, it's got to be a good coach. You know what? You get the 5 guys from Barcelona, you get guys like Suarez and Messi and Jordi Alba and Busquets and all those guys there. You're going to be a pretty good coach. Greg Vanney, on the other hand, took a team that had lost. Yes, he has 8 starters new from the start of last season. Some of them came in August of last season, but that to a coach. And now I'm kind of arguing against myself. Tata Martino had to bring these guys together. But again, 5 of those guys were teammates for a long time.
Right.
Greg Vanney had to take a guy from Brazil, a guy from Ghana, had a couple of guys from Japan, and had to get them on the field to play together. I think Greg Vanney did a lot more coaching. All due respect to Tata Martino, that had a great season. Greg Vanney was a better coach this year, and I don't think it's really close.
I'll say it again, and then maybe I'll be done. No, probably not. Not until the season's completely over. Greg Vanney took a team from 13th to 2nd. He took a team, Chris Armas took a team from 14th to 7th. That 7th place team lost 14 games. I don't know how you can be Coach of the Year and lose 14 games, but apparently you can. So that's something that's in there. That's the spot that Wilfred Nancy to me is always should be one of your Coach of the Year nominees, because I think he's one of the best. Columbus just didn't react. They got a little unlucky, and you can get unlucky in the playoffs. Buckle up for that, because that's something we haven't discussed. Is the LA Galaxy have been good enough that luck hasn't played into it, except that look at the first goal against Colorado. That was lucky, right? There was luck involved in that. You can't say the Galaxy, deserved that 100%. The end scoreline makes it seem like that wasn't a big deal, but that first goal going in the way it is, that's luck. Welcome to the playoffs in single elimination. You get some bad luck. You get some bad bounces. You get the twist of an ankle, something that happens that's a little bit different than what you're expecting, and everything can crumble real fast. So this is a little bit of luck, a lot of skill. I always go from Titanic, I make my own luck, right? Whenever he takes all the money and puts it into his pocket. This is the Galaxy have been gathering their money for this. They make their own luck as much as they possibly can, but it doesn't mean they won't go down with the ship. Wow, what an analogy. Titanic sinking all the way there.
So if you're Minnesota, when you just look at the teams, they can't win a track meet against the Galaxy. If there's an open game, Galaxy win every time. Minnesota's a defensive-minded team. They have some guys that can score when they have to. Do you just park the bus from the start and hope for a break? Maybe. Is that what you do if you're Minnesota? Because you can't play the Galaxy straight up.
Yeah, no, it's difficult. There's only a few teams that could try to play. Miami's one of them that can try to play the Galaxy
LAFC.
Straight up. Yeah, LAFC is there. That's maybe it. Straight up in terms of you're not trying to do anything. But by the way, LAFC's tactics so far, especially in these playoffs, have been to sit back, absorb, and run on the counter. I mean, that can play into the Galaxy's hands, which is what I think we saw in their last meeting before everything was over. So again, looking at everything and the way it plays out, here are the games that you get to watch this weekend. It's Friday night, LAFC in Vancouver, 7:30 p.m. Saturday.
Why aren't they playing on Saturday or Sunday?
Gee, I have no idea.
Must be a concert there.
Must be. Cincinnati, 1 p.m. and New York City on Saturday. So Cincinnati and New York City, 1 p.m. Pacific Coast time. You have Orlando hosting Charlotte, 3 p.m. Pacific Coast time, and then Miami, which will be the nightcap there. It's 5 p.m. Pacific time. Miami and Atlanta. All 4 of these games are game 3s, all do or dies. Everybody plays. If it's tied after 90 minutes, they go into penalty kicks. That is how it will end. It could end for some of these teams on penalty kicks, and the way that we saw some of the other teams end and the games end, there's a good chance that at least 2 or 3 of those will go to penalty kicks. So,
Steve Trundle, LAFC coach, apparently was very unhappy about having to play this game on Friday, and went to management, and he said, why can't we play the game there? And then he came out of that meeting and said, I learned the truth at 17.
At 17? Oh, I was like, is this a real story? But then I was like,
that was terrible. Maybe if you sing it.
No, I'm absolutely not. I'm not going to save you. That's just a bad joke. I could tell by the way that you were talking that it was a bad Baxter joke. I was just waiting for it to like play out. So
that's not even good enough to be a dad joke.
It's not.
Way more miserable.
Here's what we have in terms of podcast schedule. I don't think there's going to be a podcast on Thursday. We'll talk about whether there's one on Monday. Again, we're going to have a long break here between the next one. The Galaxy will play on the 23rd or the 24th. We'll know about that on Saturday night after everything's done. Probably announced on Sunday at some point is when you'll find out when it is, and we'll relay that to you whenever it happens. So possibly back on Monday to talk a little bit of LA Galaxy and at least get you pointed in towards that Minnesota game. The Galaxy training right now, they were off today. They will come back Tuesday through Thursday, and then I believe they're off Friday through Monday. Greg Vanny joking a little bit. Let me make sure I got that right because I was reading it earlier. Nope, that's not it. That's not it at all. Kevin, how dare you?
Do you really think we should take time off? Because we're going to get out of rhythm this late in the season.
Yeah, because we're always within rhythm, I can certainly tell. Let's see. Okay, so the Galaxy are off today on Monday the 4th. They will train, then they will be off from Friday through Monday. So Greg Vanny telling us after the game that they had discussed with some of the players. He goes, they already send in their negotiators to get some extra days off, so that way they could rest and recover and do a lot of things. So the Galaxy will get Friday through Monday off. They'll return Tuesday, and then basically Tuesday through Sunday training every single day on that. So Tuesday the 12th through Sunday the 17th, and then there's a whole nother week after that, and that's a game week on the backside. So that's what you can expect from the LA Galaxy in terms of training schedule and everything. Galaxy will get some days off. Maybe they'll go to Disneyland, maybe they'll relax a little bit, spend some time with their family, and then they'll come back and ready and basically have 2 weeks really to train and be ready for the game against Minnesota. So I
don't even think the Killer Peas can afford Disneyland now.
Yeah. You don't think
those
so?
Tickets are insane.
It's a little much. But funny enough, it's usually still pretty crowded. So I don't know how that works. So anyway, anything else you want to touch on before we get out of here? Because I think that's pretty much it. We can wrap it up.
You want to do some more jokes?
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
No. We're done with jokes and everything else. I think that'll do it. Yeah, go vote. That's the COG way. Go vote. We appreciate everybody who goes out there, does their civic duty in voting, participating in the democracy. Always a good part. All right, let's get out of here then. If you're looking for Mr. Kevin Baxter on Twitter or X, it's at kbaxter11, latimes.com. Follow all of Kevin's writings, whether he's covering hockey, basketball, football, or the LA Galaxy or LAFC on soccer. Any of the women's game, of course, is there as well. So check it out, at kbaxter11. If you're looking for me on Twitter or X, it's at Guesman, at Galaxy Podcast. Head on over to cornerofthegalaxy.com. And of course, like I said, no show this Thursday, but possibly back on Monday. We'll keep you updated. Look for Facebook and Twitter updates. We'll let you know how that goes. All right, for Mr. Kevin the Panda Baxter, I'm Josh Pato Guesman. You've been listening, you've been watching to Corner of the Galaxy from the Box on cornerofthegalaxy.com. Have a great one, everybody.
You've been listening to the Corner of the Galaxy podcast on cornerofthegalaxy.com. You can follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Galaxy Podcast. And be sure to check out and subscribe to iTunes, Stitcher, and Facebook by searching for Corner of the Galaxy. Fans, we thank you for listening. We ask that you be kind and courteous to your neighbors as you leave the podcast. We thank you for joining us and look forward to seeing you again. Until then, I'm Michael Araujo, and on behalf of the entire Corner of the Galaxy crew, goodbye, everybody.